All right, we are continuing with our data unit. Big idea, collecting, analyzing, and displaying data helps us to solve problems and understand the real world. We have collected data through questionnaires, through conducting experiments. At this point, we are moving on to collecting data using a database to draw conclusions. So a database would be second-hand data. It's data that has already been collected for you. Some examples, you might go to Weather Canada or Census Canada or encyclopedias and use data that is already collected and use that to then create your graph. Now, things to consider when you are creating your graphs, especially from a database. You need to make sure that your title should be very specific. You also should have a title for each axis. Each side needs a title. It needs to include units such as dollars or degrees Celsius or whatever the case may be. Numbering, when you're numbering, remember to number the lines, not the spaces. As well, that scale or the numbering that you use, you need to use regular intervals. You need to count by 5s, 2s, 1s, etc. And you always start at 0. So that might mean you end up going 0, 2, 4, and so on, or you could go 0, 3, 6. You cannot go 0, 1, 3, and so on, because then it's not actually a regular interval. This numbering is also called the scale. You cannot jump when numbering. It has to be by those regular intervals. The numbering interval or scale does not have to be the same for both the x and the y axes. So when you're numbering, this side could be by 2s, and if you wanted, this side could be by 5s. It does not have to be the same. You should have a legend if you are using or creating a double bar graph. You should tell the color or pattern of the different sets of data. So if it were 2 columns and one was boys and one was girls, the boys one was red, the girls one was green, that should be in a legend. Lastly, it must always be drawn on grid paper or graph paper. A graph on unlined or blank paper or even just plain lined paper is extremely difficult to read and then becomes less accurate. So it must be on graph paper or grid paper. All right, so to practice, we have Lawrence and Leon who have a baby sister named Lacey. The boys are collecting data about Lacey's weight, and each of them has made a graph to show how fast she is growing. And we can see they're going by months, the birth age in months, 3, 6, 9, and so on, every 3 months. And they're measuring her weight in kilograms. So as you can see in Lawrence's graph, he has a title, Lacey's weight, it's fairly specific, age in months, so he's got that specific as well. His weight in kilograms, that's specific as well. He's starting at 0, and over here he's counting by 6s, looks like, so, and it's regular intervals. He is skipping a line in between, but that's not a problem because he's done that every time. If he only did it the first time, or every second time or whatever, that would have been a problem. On the side here, he's also counting by 2s. He skipped a line each time, but it all looks like it makes sense. So now let's move on. All right, now let's take a look. We're going to compare Lawrence's graph that we've already discussed to Leon's graph and just see what the difference is. So he also has a good title. He is missing this title, so he would need to have added age in months. He does have the weight in kilograms. The problems here being, he does still go by 6s down here, that's fine. Here he decides to count by 10s. When the highest weight is less than 15, counting by 10s may not be our best choice. What do you notice about reading these graphs? Do you find a difference when it's numbered by 2s and when it's numbered by 10s? I think there is a difference. This graph tends to be more clear. It's more specific. We can see the rise, and it's more clear how much it's increased. So for example, here we can see a big jump. Here we can see that there's a little bit less, and that's more clear because of the larger gap between the numbers here, the smaller scale. Counting by tens was not the best choice here. So remembering when you are looking at your database information that you're collecting, that you are careful when it comes to the scale and how you number your sides. All right, for this we don't actually have concept practice this time. This time it's going to be an open question where you are creating your own. You are going to go to the Census at School website. You are going to choose your own topic to create a line graph. Depending, you may need to create a double bar graph based on your data, if it's comparing two pieces of information or not. So drawing your graph, remembering to use all of the information that we've discussed when it comes to drawing a graph, and then make 4 excellent conclusions about your data, conclusions that are specific. Remember, if you have any questions along the way, that of course you ask. Away you go.